I want to start with something that Mitt Romney said, because I want to ask you about something similar that shaped your thinking. Let's listen to what Mitt Romney said was going through his mind about the importance of this vote and what he will tell his children.
I will tell my children and their children that I did my duty to the best of my ability, believing that my country expected it of me.
Senator Jones, you talked about your father. We heard Mitt Romney talk about his children. You began by talking about your father and what this kind of vote would mean to him and how your father would approach a decision like this.
I did. I lost my dad just about a month ago, and he stays with me so much throughout this entire process. And his principles were of right and wrong. His principles, he was a strong man, and he really was a patriot, and he put his country above just about anything else. And at the end of the day, that's what we should all do. That's what the oath of office as a U.S. Senator is. It's what our oath of office to do impartial justice is. And I thought about him. I thought about my kids. I thought about my grandkids and what I would want them to see and say about their father and their grandfather down the road when history is going to be our judge. And I really believe that those of us who voted the way we did today to convict the president will ultimately be judged to be on the right side of history.
And Senator, I can tell you, having worked in the Senate for years, I can count on just a couple of fingers how many times I have seen a United States senator put his or her career on the line with a Senate vote. You did that today. How much of the weight of that did you feel in doing that?
Lawrence, I know this is going to come as a surprise for folks because I think so many people, especially in the media, when the polarized atmosphere that we have today, everything is seen through some kind of political partisan lens. But that really did not enter my thinking in this. I really looked at the weight of this was on my shoulders as a constitutional perspective. This is the most sacred right that we have, the right to vote, to make sure that the will of the people stay intact. And to try to remove a president of the United States, to consider that and ultimately have to cast a vote one way or another. That's the weight I felt. It really wasn't a political weight. It was purely the weight of the Constitution, what the Founding Fathers said, and what I believe it to be the future. I wanted my vote to be a message for future presidents and for future Congresses as to where we need to be as a people and what we need to be looking for in the next president of the United States and this president of the United States.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.